couple months ago, I finally decided to learn Webflow and build a more robust website to act as a complete content hub for me and my venture Station. If you don't know Webflow is what I like to think of as the most robust no-code website builder. If you're used to a website builder like Squarespace or Wix, it's similar to these tools, but you have full control of every single pixel. In Squarespace or Wix, you can customize the templates and definitely make those websites your own, but you're still pretty limited. With Webflow, you have full control and can design pretty much anything you'd like as a website. You can make a simple landing page, a more robust content hub like I have with the Station website, or even a full custom learning management system. It's pretty wild what you can build with Webflow. In this video, I'm going to cover some of the basics of Webflow. To get started, we're going to build a basic website with Webflow's clonables, aka templates from Webflow or Webflow's users that you can use for free. Without further ado, let's jump into Webflow. So here we are on Webflow's homepage. It's as simple as webflow.com, as you can see up top, but also you can use the link down in the description, which is my affiliate link for Webflow. So I do get a little bit of credit if you do sign up using Webflow with that link. So thank you in advance if you do. With that in mind, let's actually jump into the clonables for Webflow, which is a great starting point for getting your website with Webflow started. So what we're going to do is actually go into resources here and go to made in Webflow. So I'll click on here. And what I want to do is actually click on clonable sites only. Now, clonable sites only, these are the sites that you can clone right into your Webflow workspace, and you can have 2 free sites, just to start and to start playing around with Webflow. So just to get started with Webflow, you don't have to pay anything quite yet. Now, what I would do if you're just getting started with Webflow is just take a look at these clonables and you just kind of see what you like, what you don't like. And so you can scroll here, right? You can see this landing page. You can see some like kind of cool designs, right? This is like pretty bold. You can kind of see like, here's like a pretty simple one. You can see right here's like a style guide. You can kind of take elements of what you like and what you don't like here in Webflow, and you can really see the behind the scenes of each of these clonables. Now, instead of just scrolling through all these different clonables, which are essentially templates that you can kind of get inspiration from and use, what I want to do is actually click into one of these and actually clone it into my Webflow space. So that way you can see what it's like to actually use these Webflow clonables. So what I'll do here is actually click on this one here. It's pretty simple, but you can see like there's a lot of different of these style guides, which the style guides are super helpful for someone who's not a designer like myself. And these can really help you get started, especially if you're brand new to Webflow, because they have a system in place and they give you just a really nice template to use in a Webflow, which is great because you can customize everything, but it's also a little bit daunting because simple things, even of like, what's the margin? What's the weight of the text, right? All these different things. It is a full playground and everything's wide open. It's the wild, wild west, but that's also overwhelming. So these clonables are super, super helpful to get you started. So what I'll do here is actually click clone in Webflow. It'll boot it up here. And what I'll do here is hit create site. So I'll say it's a fantastic site because it's going to be a fantastic site. I'll create site, give it a second to load up. Okay, now that it's loaded up, now we are here in the Webflow designer. Now the designer is a little complicated to start, but it's actually quite simple once you get a little bit used to it. So right here is the full template. Here's the full clonable. You can see right now, if I click on things or just hover over things, I can see all of these different aspects, which is a little overwhelming. But before we get into that, let me show you what it's like around the designer in Webflow. So right, these are the different pages. So there's sample layouts here and like a dark mode screen here. So this clonable is actually pretty simple, right? So this is going to be not much here. So right, so what you want to do is actually just click on home and you select a home page here, but the pages here in Webflow, these are the different pages of your website. So maybe you'll have like a home page, you'll have an about page, maybe a contact page, right? Very simple stuff here, and they will all be here. Utility pages, those are just like if you have passwords, and maybe if you have a 404 page, because a link is broken, whatever it might be. CMS, this would be like your blogs, or if you're designing a portfolio, these would be the systems that you're going to be creating here. CMS tools in Webflow are super, super powerful. They take a minute to get used to, but once you are, they can do a lot of different things. You actually can link CMSs together. If you watched other videos on this channel, if you like Airtable in linked records, or even relations in Notion, CMS in Webflow has some very similar properties, which is pretty stinking cool. So there's that. E-commerce we're not going to touch, and user pages we're not going to touch here, but at least you know where they're at. Okay, so that's pages. Now, if I click on here, these are like the navigator. So these are the CSS. This is the layout, really like the kind of like the code behind all of this. This is really just to kind of show you the different elements that are in your Webflow page. More on that in a second. Now, here is the components. Now, these are components that maybe you're reusing things over and over and again on a page. So for example, right, you're going to have a nav bar, you're going to have a footer, right? You can then create those into components. So if I just actually click on here, if I right click on it, right, I can create component, and that way you can create it so it's standardized throughout every single page of your website. These are incredibly useful, especially for nav bars, because you just have to edit once then, and it edits across all of your pages. It's pretty nifty. Now, one of the new things that they've been working on is what they call variables. And the variables are really nice because these are essentially standardizing your colors and your fonts and text sizes, all the different things. And then that way you can just select them as you're editing things. And then if you edit them here, it'll edit across the board on your website too. And so that way you're not like, oh, this, like if you change a color or, you know, change a tint, change a font size, maybe for a heading in one page, it'll actually keep it standardized across your website. These are really cool too. Okay, so now styles, these are what's kind of connected. So you can actually create kind of like combo styles, all these different things. These are incredibly powerful. You can get complex really quickly with them and really confusing. One little tip for myself that I've learned is like to really label these really clearly, so that way you understand them. And that way actually then too, if you're editing, right? So maybe it's a paragraph, and then you can see like this is what these are, right? So if I go here, these are connected to this on the right. So then if I change these, right, it's going to change. So this is kind of like a part of that. So this is essentially saying like, hey, I want you to grab this style from this style, right? So all these are style selectors is what they call them. There's a lot of complexity to them, so I'm not going to go into them too much, but these help you again create standardized style across your full website. Now, if you go into this photos here, here's all the photos that you can upload to your website. Pretty simple with that. These is you're managing your CMS. So if you have a blog, if you have a portfolio, these will pop up, and then you can start adding new items. So maybe it's a new blog post, a new portfolio item, another, maybe an image, whatever it might be that you might be using the CMSs for. You can be adding new items into here, and you can see the collections. Logic, not going to get into this, but these are like kind of like the automations. Users, we're not going to get into that either. That's also a more pro feature. This is e-commerce. And then here are these apps that you can now start plugging into Webflow as well. So lots and lots of different ways you can use Webflow, but the main kind of features that you'll use on this left bar especially are like the pages and probably the CMS. These are the two places that I spend most of my time with my own website with Station. All right, so let's get into this clonable here. And the nice thing about this clonable is like they have it fully styled, and you can even use these different color guides as a tool too. So the nice thing about this as well, maybe you're using a tool like Canva, you can just steal these colors, put them into your brand kit in Canva, and now you're standardized across the board. And because there's a template and someone who actually is a designer, unlike myself, it actually looks pretty solid. You can kind of guarantee that. Now you can use the different pieces, and then you can see, right, they've labeled everything really nicely. So you can see here in the style selector, like here's what you're gonna get if you make this type of thing, and then here, right? That's pretty stinking nice. So they have all these different pieces, right, that can help you really build an awesome website from here. And you can see like there's different elements. So actually one of the things I didn't mention was this plus button here in elements. These are the different parts of your website builder, right? So if you go into maybe like a Squarespace or Wix, right, this has some similar elements, right? So if I'm going to add maybe a section, right, you add a section, which is one of these essentially. So if I click on this, right, this is a full section. So you can see here, if I go actually into this navigator, right, I can see how this is all built out. This is where it's quite a bit different from like Squarespace or Wix, because you don't get all this detail. This is overwhelming, but it's actually pretty simple, right? You can just think of it as a big hierarchy, like what's living in what. So what you can think of, right, is if this box, right, this section, right, if it's going underneath it, that container is then in that section. And that section that kind of defines the properties for that entire everything in it. So the nice thing, right, is if you label things really nicely and do really clean styles, that makes your life a lot easier. So there's that. But you can see, again, these make like colors and fonts really easy. Now on the right, you can see this is kind of if you're used to like maybe Google Sheets or like a word processor, pretty simple, right? There's just different ways to display things. That's kind of like wrap text and those kind of things. Direction is like how do you want to align things. Justify, pretty similar as well. Spacing and margin. This gets really complicated as well, but the nice thing about, again, using one of these is you can scroll down in here and it actually shows you how to actually use spacing and margin. So you can see they've actually made padding and everything right. So if you see, like if I click on here, you can see they've made the margin really quickly. So let's say you want to standardize margin across the board, just add this style selector and it's going to make all these margins the same size, which is fantastic, right? And if you want to edit them, right, you can just go into here, start editing, and it's going to edit across the board as well. Now, it's a little bit dangerous because if you start editing here and then it's like, oh my gosh, it's going to edit everywhere. So just keep that in mind. But you can see, right, this is actually a variable, which is then tied to the style selector. So you can actually tie these variables with the style selectors, which is pretty stinking powerful. Okay, so that's all of this. Align, style, it's all pretty simple. You can add backgrounds and borders and all these different things here. If you want to do interactions, so maybe you want like to see things move and all that kind of things, and maybe things happen when your cursor starts moving over things. That's where interactions is. I'm not going to get into that here. Okay, so you can see, right, this is pretty easy to start building off of. Now, the nice thing too is like maybe you're not in love with like how this is laid out, but you like certain elements. Well, because you're in the designer of Webflow and now you can start seeing everything, you'd actually start copying and pasting and just start stealing like an artist from these different clonables in Webflow. So you can start even looking through, right? There's a lot of detail in here and you probably don't need everything, but you can start seeing like, okay, like what actually, like how big a padding did they actually set, right? So I can see here, like here's actually their padding, right? That's kind of interesting. Like maybe you like that style a lot. That makes life a lot easier, right? Especially if you're not a designer, like rounded corners. There's all these little things that the clonables make your life a lot easier. The last thing I want to do in this video is show you what it's like to build a brand new page from scratch using with the clonable here. So what I'm going to do here is actually go into this page here. And I deleted the folder and the page because in Webflow, for a free site, you can only get 2 pages, which is really limiting, but at least gives you a starting point. So I deleted that and I just have this home page. Now what I'm going to do here is hit create a new page. And let's say just about page. We'll make it really simple, right? So I'm not going to use SEO settings. I can go and do that, edit that later. I'll click on create. And you're going to see there's a new layout. So what I'm going to do here is actually just go into this plus and I'm going to add into this layout. So layouts are really simple because these are kind of the easy starter templates. So what I'm going to do here is just click on this. I'm going to click on it and you can see it's going to pop it in and this is going to not be stylized at all. So before I start stylizing though, I'm just get the basic framework of this page together. So I'm going to click on this again, go into layouts, and let's just make it super simple. Let's just do this one, right? So I'll click on this. Whoops, because it can't be nested because this is different sections. That makes sense. So I'll go into here, I'll click on this, drag it over, and you can see now I'm starting to see what a website looks like. And then let's grab a foot or two while we're at it. So we'll do this, we'll keep scrolling, and I'll just drag this over. So now, like, is it pretty? No, but at least gives us a starting point a little bit. So you can see right now that we have the website, kind of the framework, we're not using the clonable just really yet. We're not using any of the styles or any of that yet. But so what I'm going to do here is actually go back into the homepage to see what it's actually the style guide and whatnot and see like what they're using. So if I click on this, right, you can see it's H1, which means heading 1. And I can see in the style selector like what they're using. So it would be display 1 bold, which is going to be like the font and the size. And then this is the margin style, what they're using, right? So if I scroll even down here, right, I can see if I go into here, like if I go back to margin. So if we scroll, you can see, right, M bottom S. So we'll look through here. M bottom S is this one, right? It's this small bottom margin that we want on the bottom. So you can look through here in this clonable of all the different styles and everything here. So I'll look through that. And let's go back to our about page and actually style it. So if I go back here, click on the title, and I want it to match that front here. So I'm going to use bold. So I'll display one bold. Boom, now it's matching. And then I'm gonna add this. Now you can see the margin now matches. And then if you start editing this, it's gonna edit for everybody. Okay, so now we have the title done, but now we can do the rest of it, all right? So let's say we wanna do the button. So I'll go back here to home, and then I can start seeing what this all is like, right? So I can start seeing, here is the buttons. Let's find the buttons. If I scroll down, they're way down here. This is, again, this is the part of Webflow that gets pretty complicated, right? But we want to make sure that we're being stylized, standardized styles across the board. And if we want to match this, right, that's what we want really nicely. So if I scroll here, keep going, there's stickers, here's the buttons, right? So you can see here's dot button, and I can see button, and then just have, it's as simple as that, button. You should have known. Okay, so go to pages, we go back to about. I'm gonna click on this whole button. Once it loads, it says button primary, right? And we're just gonna remove it and just click on button. And now it matches, right, what it is in the clonable. So you can start doing all these different things. You can actually even start copying and pasting from here. So if I actually go to home, and let's say I want to add different pieces. Let's say I want to add maybe a new text or whatnot. So what I'm going to do from here is actually click on this, Command C, and then go back to pages, go to about, and then I can just copy and paste right into it. So I'll click on here, I'll click into this section, and then I'll just do Command V. And you can see now I want this, and now I can actually delete that. And now, right, this is already, the styles are already here. So we have the title bold, title B, and then it has the margin in there as well. Now that I have this text, and now I can go through and start building this full website with this clonable. And yes, you can start using the pages from the clonable itself in some of them, I'm sure. You can start editing the text and whatnot. They're a little bit easier. This is a lot just of the setting up the style, but that's a really big part of these Webflow clonables and just Webflow in general, is if you get the style right, really the rest of Webflow, these sites become a lot easier. So highly, highly recommend using these clonables and the libraries of Webflow to get started. It's gonna take a little bit of time, but it is so worth it to build a really robust website. So that's some of the basics of building a website using Webflow. If you want to check out Webflow for yourself, use a link down in the description.